Okay, we will call this Committee of the Whole February 22nd to order. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq. Record of attendance, and I'm looking for absent with regrets. Go ahead, Deputy.
I'd like to make a motion that we excuse Councillor Lesser.
Okay, second by Councillor Bell. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Any declarations of conflict of interest? And you can certainly declare at the time of the agenda item. Good so far. Approval of agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions? I will add warming center just to give you an update, but I think you have that there.
And can I add Communities in Bloom, a motion that came from Communities in Bloom yesterday, please?
Yes, certainly. And then there was something on here. Okay, so the housing has Councillor Lesser's name by it. Did we want to, well, we can remove that and get an update. Okay, so remove KL, it's 9L. Otherwise, does it look good? I have a motion to go ahead, CAO.
Sorry, Your Worship, I noticed 9K also has Councillor Lesser's name by it. Is that something someone else is going to speak to?
Yeah, the letter's attached. So I was thinking I could
Sure, okay.
just see if everybody's okay with that. All right, motion to approve. Okay, Councillor Dares, second by Councillor Cleveland. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried, thank you. Okay. Presentations. So the first one we have, is it yep, Catherine's here. So Catherine Sweet, the Basic Income Group of Nova Scotia. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you.
So
Am I coming through okay?
Yes, it's great. We're going to give you the floor, and we have two screens here, so hopefully everybody can see. And if there's people back there in the audience, it's staff and David, if you guys can't see, just move so you can if you want to see it. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen with you here. Thank you for seeing us today. I'm Catherine Sweet. I'm the Secretary of Big Nova Scotia, and I'd like to talk to you about a basic income and municipalities. Our definition of a basic income is a regular payment made to people who need it and distributed with minimal bureaucracy. The basic income we advocate for is not for everyone. It's for those who need it. It does not replace other necessary social services and supports, but rather complements them. It's not means tested, so it's simply income tested. We're not getting the intrusive, onerous, demeaning, stigmatizing requirements or conditions. This is really to cut down on barriers and gatekeeping involved with this program. And it's not the same for everyone. The maximum benefit would go to those who need it the most, and it would gradually be reduced as income rises. Let's look at some numbers here. We have some fresh data from the 2021 census showing that the national poverty rate is actually down to 8.1%. This dropped from the 2015 numbers of 14.5%. I'll quote directly from StatCan here because they do explain this, saying declines in poverty were driven by higher government transfers in 2020, including the enhanced Canada Child Benefit and temporary pandemic relief benefits. The CCB, the Canada Child Benefit, and CERB are both really forms of basic income. For reference going forward though, although the national rate is around 8%, the rate of poverty in Nova Scotia is 9.8%. So 1 in 10 of our neighbors live in poverty. We are in the middle of a healthcare crisis, as I know you know. Poverty is the most powerful predictor of poor health. In decreasing poverty, we will lower the risk of illness, we'll shorten hospital stays, decrease early death. It will aid in healthier food choices. It lowers substance abuse, food and housing insecurity. It increases choice, and by increasing choice, we don't just increase dignity, but also safety for our neighbors. It increases education outcomes both for children and for adults, and it lowers negative involvement with the law. Within these low-income populations, the numbers increase drastically for marginalized populations, namely Indigenous folks, people living with disabilities, new Canadians, single parents, and a group that I will soon belong to, single adults between the age of 45 and 64. I'd like to introduce you to the term, if you don't already know it, which is the precariat. The precariat is the part of our population and our neighbors who have very vulnerable income. These are folks that work with variable hours or seasonal work. They're not unionized. They have no benefits, very few rights or protections, and are one paycheck away from real trouble. We have numbers from 2016 showing that around a quarter of Canadians belong to the precariat, so I can only estimate that it's gone up since then in 7 years. Now, I've already mentioned the Canada Child Benefit is a form of basic income. We know it's not enough. We know it's not enough because across the country, 17% of children live in poverty. Here in Nova Scotia, unfortunately, it is higher. 22% of our children live in poverty. And if we look at Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis children and Black children, the numbers are woefully higher, and these numbers may be staggering to you here. This is the Nova Scotia stats from 2016. I know you know intimately that poverty is felt in our municipalities very sharply, and many responsibilities are laid on municipalities' shoulders. As our neighbor, our mayor here in Halifax, Mike Savage, says, the feds have the money, the provinces have the jurisdiction, but the cities have the problems. And I just put up here on the side the CTV story from the fall, or maybe it was early winter, saying that 1 in 6 Nova Scotia households are food insecure. Pardon me. Okay. I present to you that poverty is a political choice. A federally funded and administered basic income would dramatically reduce poverty and treat people with dignity. We just need the political will to make the right policy choices. Before I leave you, I'd like to address some myths about basic income. 1, that people won't work. 2, that we can't afford it. And 3, that government spending causes inflation. 1, people won't work. Basic income has been studied around the world, and no research shows that people stop working. A Manitoba study showed that the employment status changed very little, and when people did work less, it was either to improve their education or to care for loved ones. A Finnish study showed that employment actually increased for recipients. 2, we can't afford it. Now, yes, a basic income, it is expensive. In 2018, the Parliamentary Budget Office ran a study, and they estimated it would be around $76 billion federally, but consider the cost savings. Besides the stress and suffering and loss of human potential, poverty costs us real money. Currently, federally, around $32 billion is spent on poverty, and the provinces and territories kick in another $20 billion. So really the net cost, if we went by the PBO study, would come down to around $25 billion. But really, that's not the true numbers. The Ontario Association of Food Banks hired some economists to really crunch the true numbers, and they figure that the cost of poverty in Canada is between $72 and $86 billion annually. And this rolls in healthcare, soup kitchens, shelters, policing and corrections, incarcerations, which we know is all tied to poverty. We already know that forms of basic income are a net positive. For example, the Canada Child Benefit generates almost twice the economic activity as it costs. And finally, our last myth, the I word, that government spending on basic income will cause inflation. Neither the old age security nor guaranteed income supplement or the Canada Child Benefit have shown to contribute to inflation. Inflation is more really about strong demand, all the supply chain woes we're seeing, and geopolitical unrest. Meanwhile, grocery chains and oil companies are reporting incredible profits, and by mid-2022, the major banks in Canada, their profits increased over $3 billion, all while cutting their workforce. So I might suggest on the side that corporate tax reforms can help fund a basic income in Canada. So Yarmouth, I would urge you to join other municipalities in writing a letter to the Prime Minister and to our Premier here in Nova Scotia for a federally funded basic income. You would join the majority of Atlantic Canadians who support a basic income. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm here, and two of my colleagues from Basic Income Nova Scotia are here as well.
Thank you very much. Any questions, anyone? Go ahead, Councillor Cleveland.
Very good presentation. Thank you very much. I noticed that one of the groups that you showed as showing support was the Union of, I think it was British Columbia Municipalities. Have you gone to the UNFM and done any, or the NSFM now it's called, and made a presentation to them?
Sorry, what was the question?
Have you gone to the Federation of Nova Scotia Municipalities generally and made a presentation? Because perhaps as a group there would be some interest. And then you've got all the municipalities.
I suspect so. Let me hand the mic over to my colleague, Mandy K. Rainingbird, who's been with the group much longer and has better answers. Mandy, can you turn on your mic there? There.
Hi, thank you for the question, Mr. Cleveland. Yes, there has been a presentation given to the Atlantic Mayors Congress, and that was done by myself and Way Mason, Councillor Way Mason, who was the person who brought the resolution forward to the Halifax Council. And there is a hope to bring it to the Nova Scotia Mayor's Group. I believe that Mayor Savage is going to assist us in that process, but if you have any recommendations about how to get us in front of them, we would really appreciate it, or if you can assist us in that regard.
Thank you.
Yeah, you would just, you can just send us a note at the town of Yarmouth. I'm past president, so I just pass that on. Or actually even just go online, NSFM, Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, and contact them through there. They would, okay. I'm sure they would welcome you in to do that. Any more questions? Go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Well, first of all, welcome home to Yarmouth, even if it's virtually. This young lady makes me feel old. I remember her as a little girl running around my neighborhood. But the reason I hit the mic is I'd make a motion that we support this with a letter.
No, we can't do that yet. Yeah. We don't do, yep, that's okay. I mean, we can talk about it later and do that.
No, I will make a motion.
So I just have one question, but it's a big one. When you say it's made for the people who need it, like who needs it? I'm not saying people don't need it, by the way. I'm just saying, like, when you put that in a box, because I just, you know, the child benefit, the other social monies from federally and provincially, and then this on top of it. So how do you figure out who needs it?
It would be tied to measures of poverty across the country. We know that current supplements are not even bringing people up to that point, especially if we look at folks with disabilities. People with disabilities are living in incredible poverty in our country. Forgive me, I'm going to lob it over to Mandy again because I know she has these numbers right off the top of her head. Mandy, Pierre, can I call you in to quickly answer this one? Thank you.
Yeah, no, your answer was good, Catherine. And basically, Mayor Wood, the people who would receive it are people whose incomes are inadequate to meet their basic needs. And as Catherine was saying, the full benefit would be provided to people who have no other income, and there would be a gradual reduction in the benefit as earned income increased up to a maximum amount. So that would allow people who are in the precariat, as Catherine described before, to also be eligible for some support as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
And
Yep.
yeah, income, of course, income is monitored by the taxation system, the federal taxation system, and so that would be a reasonable approach for administration.
Good. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one more question. So if somebody now is unemployed and they're unemployed or they're on social assistance programs, and they took a job that was a minimum wage job, could this be used to supplement that income to bring it up to a better standard of living and get them off of the social programs?
Yeah, and certainly with the current minimum wage, I mean, I looked at the numbers today, and it means that someone working full-time on minimum wage would be taking home around $1,500 a month. So you know that, if it was a single person like myself, it's hard to find a one-bedroom apartment for $1,500. That would be putting me in real danger of living in substandard or maybe shared living situations. And on top of that, I wouldn't be able to get glasses or my teeth fixed or my prescriptions, or get some chicken when it's on sale at the grocery store. Like there's real problems here. So it would bring up the income of people even working full-time on minimum wage, or 2 jobs on minimum wage, or 3 jobs, which is also reality.
Okay, thank you.
That was a good question. It was a good one because the problem sitting here is I have to do a lot more reading, and I understand I have to do a lot more reading and digging, and Wayne Mason is a friend, so he sends me stuff all the time. Makes sure you need to read this, and
I'm sure he does.
And I do, but the government funds, and then upping it with another one is one thing for people that are able to work but won't. I know you said they will work, but they're able to work and they don't. And then to Councillor Dare's question, which makes me feel a whole lot better, I'm out there working. It's not my fault that what I do doesn't pay enough for me to meet, to be able to take care of my family. That's different, to supplement those that are, we need to give a hand up. We need to stop handing out and start helping folks.
Here.
Right?
Here, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what I didn't address in my talk was the intergenerational effects of poverty and
unreal.
how the children of children of children,
Absolutely.
of people living in poverty are less well equipped to hoist themselves out of poverty.
Absolutely.
We saw that in the education outcomes and in the health outcomes of people living in poverty. So it's like the worst inheritance that we hand down to our children.
Very well put. Yeah, good. Thank you. Councillor Bell? Al
Thank-
Hatfield?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. So, just so that I'm clear, I think that the intent of the basic income program would be to take the means test away from provincial welfare programs that currently exist. So, today, if you are on welfare, there are certain constraints on what you're able to do or who you're able to live with or what jobs you're able to take and how that will impact your benefits. And I think I'm hearing you say that, or I read in your written presentation, that a basic income would transform the welfare system province to province, creating a federal program that would be universal in that anyone who meets the criteria is eligible without a means test. Is that fair to say?
It is. And it's kind of a philosophical shift away from the morality of paid work. And it also acknowledges that there is a lot of work done in this country that is not tied to income tax. So it would allow people to care for children and loved ones in their homes, care for their communities by volunteering, or go back to school. Mandy, Pierre, can you add to this?
Well, I think you answered the question very well again,
Thank you.
Catherine. And yes, absolutely. It's taking away those rules and that oversight and the requirements that people are constantly having to make the case for an income that will allow them to live with dignity. You're absolutely right there. This is taking away those means testing and simply looking at the income itself. The assumption is that every one of us is deserves the right to live and have our basic needs met.
You good? Go ahead. Oh, okay. All right, anyone else? Good. Thank you very much for the presentation and the answers and doing what you do.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I was 4 years in Yarmouth as a child, down the street from Gil, Councillor Dare. Say happy birthday to Michael in a couple weeks.
And we look forward to hearing the outcome of any motion that comes forward. If we can provide any additional information to you, we're very happy to do so.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, next we have the Facade Mural Society, David Gorman. Come on up.
Whoops. Just going to do a quick verbal presentation, I guess, if you want to call it that. So I think you all know me, and I'm the chair of the Facade and Murals program. Currently, we've got 6 members on the committee, and we're looking for a few new ones, and we've got some good candidates sort of in the wings. This past year, we had, I believe, 5 facade projects in total. There was the Arius building at 500 Main, the Blueberry Fields Cafe, 1111 Aesthetics on Water Street. Printerworks finished up their application, which may have been from the previous year. And then we've got a pending application now from Ellis Print on Collins Street. The investment from these buildings into their properties was several $100,000. In terms of murals, we had 3 murals go up this year. One of them is at 64 Water Street on the Industrial Commission's building. There's the one on Hawthorne Street on Waterview Marine Supply. And then there is also the one at 246 Main Street, which is at the foot of Cumberland. We had one of those murals utilize the lighting grant, which is part of the murals program. That's up to $1,500 in funding to provide lighting so the murals are well seen at night. I'd also like to mention that we did have mural applications come in that were not successful applications. We don't approve all applications that do come in. There's also the signage grant, which was successful this year. We've had 3 applications this year for that. And so for 2023, what we expect, 5 or more, I think, is reasonable to assume facades. There's some shuffling of real estate on Main Street, I guess, at the moment, and there's some new tenants in other buildings, as well as one existing tenant who I believe is Keen. Sign program, same, we're expecting several.
What's that one?
The sign, there's a signage grant, so it's up to those new blade signs with the aluminum
Oh,
brackets.
yes,
and-
but you just said that you had some this year already, right?
Oh, yes, sorry, so Charlene's Kitchen, 1111 Aesthetics on Water Street.
Oh, yeah, right.
And then in the works right now is also the Yarmouth Gallery Cafe. They came in
Oh,
on the
right on.
2022 year. Yeah.
Excellent.
They didn't apply for facade because the grant had been done a few years before.
Yeah.
But they did apply, they did qualify for the signage part of it.
Good.
So we have 5 or more facades potentially this year. Signage, it's impossible to predict, but I would assume roughly the same, maybe more. In terms of murals, I have had interest already from local painters as well as some from Halifax who are keen, and one from the United States. We've been having talks with the First Nations community a little bit on and off about getting a mural going. Something very, very large scale also has been in discussions, which obviously would have a very high cost compared to what we've been seeing so far. The estimates, I think, reasonably for what we kind of foresee for this year would be roughly 30 to 35,000 for facades and signage. Maybe more, and of course, maybe less. And we currently have, should I do recite bank balances and things in this presentation? Is that okay? Yep, so we've got $45,000 in the bank at the moment. And so if we assume what's going to happen for this year, it's going to leave us 10 or under $10,000. And so that doesn't account for any murals or any programs that come from things we're not expecting. So that brings me to the great question of, may we please ask you for more money this year? And this year, we're going to ask you for a little more than last year. Last year was 30, this year we're going to ask for 40. There's talks of other events and things happening. We'd all love to see a murals festival. I think it's completely doable. I see that the car show folks have chosen a date. I mean, that would kind of be a good date because Main Street's already shut. But these are also ongoing conversations within the committee. So I think there's going to be a lot of excitement this year. Obviously, the facades have slowed down from what they were when this started 10 years ago. I think it was 10 years ago. But there's still great momentum. And so the funding from the town is heavily appreciated, as is the tremendous hard work that Natalie puts in and day out. It's tremendously appreciated. So, thank you. If you have any questions, I have no visuals or anything like this. But if you've got questions at all, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Just a comment. Obviously, I'm a big fan.
Sure.
And I just wanted to express my personal thanks to the members that serve in the committee, because I know what's involved.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sometimes we're not quite as organized as we should be, but we get things done. So I think in the end, that's the main thing.
Organized, committed sometimes is better than organized.
Well, this is it too. I agree with you.
I agree, yeah. I agree with you guys too. Yeah. It's drawn a lot of attention.
We're getting there. You know, the murals festival they had in Halifax last year
Yeah.
was big, and so I've spoken with the gentleman who's organized that. And like one of the barriers we had last year with some murals that some artists and some murals that we maybe could have had was that there's a travel piece for a lot of people. And so when you've got the application and the funding to do the mural itself and everything else, but then who pays for the travel, that's sort of becoming a bit of a discussion. And so maybe something that might come up in the future, at a future presentation perhaps, but something to think about. We've also got that great ferry link that can get people here from the United States very, very easily.
Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's funny, I mean, we're a town, so we know that, you know, that's where people congregate. You travel a lot, I travel a lot, probably most people here, except for our deputy. He mans the fort while we're gone. Yeah, you just congregate in the downtown, and you're looking for color, you're looking for different, you're looking for vibrant. It doesn't matter where you go, and I guess the further out you go, the more you find that, like every little nook and cranny is, you can look at something this big and just find there's a mural in it. Like there's just everything everywhere. And we've got so much space.
We're going to try to push a little more this year for that too, is to see some smaller scale murals, but also very, very large if it's possible.
Yeah.
But there's a lot involved in that, obviously.
Yeah.
Financially and logistics, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. We love it.
Thank you.
Go ahead there, Councillor.
I'd just like to reiterate, again, I don't have a question, but I would like to point out that over the past while, Fathom Studio, it was announced just lately, although they won it earlier than that they won an award for the look of the downtown. Communities in Bloom, we won a significant award at Communities in Bloom for not just the downtown, but a big part of that is the downtown. And not just what we have done, but what the facade has done has helped change that place and turn it into a meeting area, a place where community is, a vital part of the town and a great downtown. So again, thank you. This is exactly what we hoped. And the murals have changed things again. I mean, I know you and I have discussed the possibility of someday doing having mural conventions where people come to see them and celebrate them. And you're really creating something here, so thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Hi, thank you. The same here is that what has happened to our downtown through the mural and the facade program is phenomenal, and it has, basically changed our downtown. Just one question I had about, you mentioned that there were some, I think it was murals that had come to you that weren't accepted by the committee.
Yeah.
So can you just kind of speak about how that works, and do you go back and work with those people to try to come up with something
we
like?
typically would. We have in the past. In this instance, that didn't work out, but typically the committee gets an application for a mural. Everybody's got their own thoughts on it. There was imagery specifically in this one mural that a couple committee members had concerns with, so we went to people outside of our committee, including the First Nations Committee, people sort of hip to the history of the town, and there was a resounding sort of uncomfortableness about it. So at that point, it just stopped. So, yeah. But people certainly have the option to come back, go back to the drawing board, set people up with an artist, give you a new design, give you a new idea. You want to do a mural, but you don't have an idea, we can do all those things. This year, it just so happened that the ones that came to us, they already had sort of what they wanted in mind. They were sort of set in stone, set in their mind, the ways, yeah.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. I just wanted to make an observation that because you might decline to go forward with a proposal does not mean that the property owner and the artist cannot continue to do that.
100%,
It's just the funding for the
Yes.
for the town's
Yeah.
portion of the program. And
Yeah, I'm glad you
and-
mentioned that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in that instance, the business owner was told they're welcome to put these murals up. However, we won't be able to, support them in the funding model, just because, obviously it's town money and it's tax money, and we need to take
Good to
everybody
know.
into account when these things go up. And I think there's members of the community who aren't comfortable with something that you really can't get away from, a big mural. Then I don't think it's prudent to spend tax money on it.
Yeah, good point. Okay, we good? Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Big things to come.
Keep it up.
Much appreciated.
No promises on the 40. I have to tease you. Okay, let me see where we are now. Okay, staff report. So CAO, did you want to do the priorities? Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I'll just speak to the priority chart. So this is the first time we've brought it back to council since our session with Gordon McIntosh. Staff have been using the bottom portion, so from the broad yellow bar down, staff have been using this, started to use it in our directors' meetings as a communications tool, and so that's the intention of say from the yellow bar down, is for you to have it. It's probably not information you don't see within the director's reports anyway, but it's things that they felt they want to sort of make sure that council had, and the public had visibility on. If we go up to the top part of the chart, the top 5 priorities, corporate priorities, that were identified at our session are enumerated at the top. Obviously, the number 1 priority was, at that time, there was anxiety around the ferry and what was going to happen there, because there were comments in the media that suggested that the future of the ferry was maybe in peril. And so, although it's there isn't necessarily the need to organize as we felt there was that day.
Can I ask a question?
You can
I
interrupt me
don't want to,
anytime.
I don't want to interrupt, but I have to say this now or I'll forget. Do you know that the province sent out surveys?
I do.
Did you get one?
I did.
Okay.
And that's something that maybe we can jump off right there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for just a second. Is as a result of some of those comments that or I guess as a follow-up to some of those comments that we saw in the media when we were doing this priority setting, the province did indicate that they were going to do an economic impact assessment of the ferry service. And I did receive today a letter from the Deputy Minister seeking information to inform that process. And so I've had some initial thoughts about that, and I've had Lindsay start to pull together some data that I can use to show very graphically what some of the impact was just on our community, and not just in room levy proceeds, but if you look at things like our de-transfer tax, there's a pattern there that mirrors the fate of the ferry. Mm-hmm. If you look at our property assessments, there's a pattern that mirrors the fate of the ferry. And so it goes very deeply into our economy when that industry is impacted by the loss of the ferry. It goes right into personal equity in people's homes. So I'm putting together some of that information and data to be able to provide back in response to that survey.
Okay.
If
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if you wish, we do have another meeting, the next week's council meeting, prior to there being any need to submit that.
Yeah,
So if
do it
you'd
2
like,
weeks
if I
or
can have something pretty much ready by that date to circulate to council and maybe have some comment on it.
I would suggest we do that. Is everybody okay with us? Let's do that. Can we also make sure that Neil and his team got one? I know I got a couple of emails from other tourism agencies, not necessarily all connected to municipal units, but we just need to make sure he's got numbers off the charts. So we just want to make sure that, well, you can, whatever, somebody.
Yeah. So my emphasis of the stuff that I'll provide isn't so much directly tourism receipts and that kind of thing. It's more about what is the impact?
Yeah.
What's the deeper impact in the local economy? And I can only speak to our town numbers, right?
Yeah.
Numbers that we have data for. But
Absolutely.
this is not a Yarmouth ferry.
Yeah,
It's a Nova
that's
Scotia
right.
ferry. And so what
That's
happens
right.
in Yarmouth is mirrored in other communities right across the province.
Yeah, I just found it really interesting that they, which is the right thing to do, because the answers you're going to give are going to be different from a tourism perspective.
Sure.
For example. So I think that's what they're doing, is reaching out to both.
Okay.
Giver.
Okay. So the number 2 item was the Waterfront Advisory Committee, and so I think later today we're appointing a couple of councillors to that committee, and they will act as a nominating committee to review applications from citizens, and we'll make those appointments next week at the council meeting if we can pull all that together, and then we're set to go to actually start to meet and do the work of the Waterfront Advisory Committee. So that's moving along, maybe not as quickly as we would all love, but it is moving along, and so that's exciting. Municipal planning strategy, I know that the Director of Planning and Development has a plan to do the MPS, to begin the MPS work, and has made or is going to make a budget submission to get that started with consultants. Obviously, we're a little bit at a disadvantage right now without our own planner in-house. That's something that we'd love to have to go through that process. That process is underway, and I can't speak to how soon we'll be able to fill that position, but obviously it's a gap. Community grant process, I think we agreed to put that one on hold. Let's run a year with our new two intake system and see how that goes, and then review next year. So we'll kind of move that one down. And the housing assessment. So I think one of the next, under item 9B, yes, of this meeting, and actually at the previous meeting, there was a listing of housing studies that have been done in the area in the past, so those you've had. And the next step, I guess, is kind of trying to scope out, if we're going to do a housing study, What exactly what questions are we trying to answer through this study, I guess is probably the way to put it. I note that a lot of what has been done in the past is all around affordable housing, but I think we'd all agree that although there is certainly a need for affordable housing, there is a need for housing at all levels in this community, and cracking that nut is not going to be easy. But if we're going to do a study, so the value of doing a study isn't just so that we know what we intuitively know, but it's that we have something that is in black and white that we can pass to a developer, or we can pass to the province if they're considering policy changes, and say, look, this is the situation in our community. It's something that if we're talking to a developer and we say, well, we need housing, they say, well, how much do you need? What sort do you need? We can actually point to a document that has done some level of assessment of that situation. So there are a couple of opportunities there to move a couple items into our top 5, given some of the work that's been done. I would suggest to you, and this is more good news, that the Mariner Center agreement, let's move that one up because it'll be done before you know it. So that's some good news. Also, I guess we can strike a line through the under the third bullet from the bottom under the next column, consolidation MOU. We can draw a line through that one for now. We're not working on that. I think that was the decision. And on the other side of the table, I think we can draw a line through, and this is a good news story, Mariner Center expansion funding, federal and provincial, because that has come to pass. So we should move, let's say, 2 items up from the next list up into the now list, and that'll be a question for you folks. If I'm suggesting Mariner Center expansion be one of those, but you should advise us. This is your table. What else would you like to see us put more focus on?
So this is, I can't edit this on my screen, right?
No.
Okay. But we can do that? Like, I would love to see, this is where we were, cross out and add, and this is what it's looking like.
Okay.
I don't mind, I mean, I can do, I could print it off and do that. But you're saying make some changes, so we're gonna get a new document, is that how it works?
Yeah, that's right. So
Yeah, that's
what'll
what I'm
happen,
saying.
so this document will appear on all of your committee of the whole agendas going forward.
Right on,
Every third month, it'll appear up with my report and we'll talk about it.
gotcha.
But every month, it'll be there on your agenda just as an information item.
Perfect.
And it will have changes in it on the lower part because
Mm-hmm.
staff are meeting every month and we're doing the work and we're kind of documenting baby
Mm-hmm.
steps so that, it's clear to people that there is progress happening. Some things overall take longer than we would like, but what we are making progress on the items that are important. So the upper part of the chart will only change every 3 months as we talk about it in one of these meetings. So,
Perfect.
again, for information purposes, it will change at the bottom. And I'm only suggesting this. The top part will only change every 3rd month. I'm suggesting this. It's your chart, and it's your document. If you want to change every month, we can change it every month.
If I'm on a diet, I just want to see how much I lost every 3 months. It makes me feel really good.
Okay.
But that's just me. What would you folks like to see? Do you want every month? Every 3 months is good? Yeah, that's great.
Well, look, let's go with that, and
Yeah, it's too much every month.
let's go with it every 3 months. And nothing's carved in stone here. If you see something you want changed in process, then let's just talk about it and do it. Okay, this is kind of new to all of us. Okay?
Yes.
Is there something else jumps right off the page from that next column that you'd like to see slide up into the, and let me not put you on the spot. We're meeting next week.
Yeah.
So let's take that away as work for you folks to talk about, and we'll put it on the council agenda just as a late in the agenda item. What do you think? What should come up into the next box? And you can give me direction there.
Good stuff.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Any questions for CAO on his report or what he just said? Go ahead.
Not a question, more of a comment, but I really enjoy having this kind of in front of us. I find when you have a plan, it's easier to make sure where you're going. So to see it and kind of, you know, visualize it and know what we're doing. So I love the every 3 months. I think every month would be a bit much and there might not be progress in between, but really like the exercise that we did to get this and really happy to see this come out of it. So thank you.
Okay, good. Fire department report. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bell. I don't know how I just can't see that.
Worship.
Go ahead, sorry.
Just for clarity, I wanted to make sure all the dates that are on this sheet are for 2023, right? Like, we're not going backwards in time. When I first read it and I saw things like September, November, I thought that those were dates of things that had been done. And I just wanted to make sure that when I went back, I thought, okay, I think maybe we're talking about, these are dates for 2023.
Well, let me clarify.
Okay.
So when we initially did this, those dates were in the future,
Yeah, okay,
right?
and now,
And so I didn't want to change the chart from what you had agreed
yeah,
in this exercise with Gordon until we talked about it.
okay,
So the September and the November those were 2022.
okay,
All right, and the February was 2023.
Perfect.
So we'll be more clear about that, and of course, those things will be updated when we bring the chart back.
perfect.
So
Thank-
I'll just clarify one more thing. After the council meeting, when you tell me what else comes up into the upper box, this will be updated and attached to your committee of the whole agenda in February for information. And so it will be it won't be this again, it will be updated.
Good. Okay. All right, so the fire department report, the chief is here. Any questions for the chief? Go ahead. Sure can.
Worship, can we go back just one step
Absolutely.
backwards to the CAO's report? Not the strategic plan, but the CAO's report. I just had a question with regard to the total uniform assessment. Like, I just wondered if you had any way of quantifying, you know, how that's changed in the last year or so. And maybe I should be asking Jerry, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think Jerry might have he started working
Okay.
with budget, he might have a better sense of that than I
Okay.
would at this moment,
Okay.
but up, but he can
Perfect.
tell you exactly.
All right, I will withdraw that and we'll ask that question later. Thank you.
Go ahead, chief. Anything you wanted to share?
Yeah, one not minor subject, point of interest, I guess. I think probably everyone, if you don't know Oliver, you'll encounter him somewhere in your future, I'm sure. Oliver earlier this week has resigned as a volunteer. He had some other interest in his life that he wanted to take on, and he felt that it was time. So I did some rough math, and I look back. He joined around 1974, so that's 3 years before I came into this world. So that makes him about 48 years. So we'll definitely be speaking of that at our next banquet. But I just thought I'd bring that up.
Oh, gosh, yes. I know. I think everybody's in shock, like at the,
It was a tough conversation. I went to
Oh,
his
I'm
house
sure.
and had a conversation with him just to make sure that he was
it's okay.
content in his decision, and he felt it was time, and he's got some other exciting things he wants to take on. So I hope that I make that decision before I, become a grumpy older man. You're not the first one to say that.
You'll be close to 90. We'll get rid of you before that, don't worry. Unless you're still, fighting. Okay, go ahead, Councilor.
I hope I'll be gone before then.
First off, with Oliver leaving, and there's been others kind of coming and going. There's always volunteers that come and go. I mean, that's a
Correct, yeah.
significant one.
Yeah.
But how are you on volunteers, and how's our recruitment going? I always ask this.
We're pretty good. Exact numbers, we're hovering around 30 volunteers, give or take a couple. There's always, like you say, a few that come and go through the year. Generally, when if we take 6 on, we'll lose maybe 2 out of the group. We do our very best to explain to people when they take this on exactly what the expectation is, and we expect a lot from our volunteers because we have to. But overall we're doing well. We've gotten through some level 1. We're going to certify our current level 1 class early in the spring, mid to late spring at the latest. But we're doing all right. I'll be reaching out to you pretty soon, Wade, to continue on with our approach to looking for volunteers. It's working well. It's a pretty targeted approach, and we're in a pretty good place.
Good. Thank you to everything that you do and to what the career firefighters do, because it's so important, of course. But also, volunteers are a special bunch in whatever they may be. And I think volunteer firefighters are even above that because of the dedication and the hard work and the time it requires. So just from council, a huge thank you. And I think they know that.
Thank you. I will pass that along.
It is important that they know.
They don't look for the thanks, but I can say that they do appreciate it. As you know, they put a lot more hours than what the public sees. We're generally seen and not heard until they need us. And the volunteers will come out and do the work, and then they go back to their normal lives. And they do a lot of heavy lifting for sure. Absolutely.
Okay. One more thing, and actually it's our deputy mayor who suggested it, and it's something we should do, and that is we should make a motion to send a thank you letter to Oliver Gascoigne for all the amount of time that he's put in. At the very least, a thank you letter. So I would make that motion.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. And then he will be at the banquet because we'll want to do something.
Oh yeah, we'll make sure he's there.
Very special at the banquet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to dance or anything, but
I'll let him know.
Okay, we good? Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, operational services. That's Chad. Any questions? Okay. Planning and economic development. Natalie Smith is here. Any questions for Natalie? Or Natalie, if there's anything special you wanted to share? Good. Okay. Engineering report. DeMario's here. Anything special you want to share there, DeMario? You're good? It's, you know what? Remember, it used to be this one right here. I couldn't see this one. Now I can't see Val's.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just going through the report, DeMario, I was just wondering, I see you've done the design work for the south side of Stars Road for the sidewalk. And I just wanted to update myself on the sidewalk from Cottage to Haley Road. Is that somewhere in the mix down the road a bit? Are we still thinking that that's a priority sidewalk? So.
Jody Shelley.
Oh, Jody Shelley. Oh, that's right. It's Jody Shelley Drive. Oh my gosh. I'm dating myself. Cottage, yes.
Yeah.
Jody Shelley Drive to Haley Road.
Yeah. So that design is complete. It's been complete for about a couple months now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
Good?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We have engineering finance. Jerry's here. Go ahead.
Your Worship, Jared just stepped out for a minute to grab some numbers in anticipation of Councillor Bell's questions.
Okay.
So we have the answer to the question she asked, but he thought there might be some more data that
Okay.
Council would be interested in.
Good. Okay, so we'll come, when Jerry comes in, we'll just, oh, there he is. Jerry. Oh, yeah, grab your, he heard you stepped out for a muffin. And a coffee. He didn't bring any back with him.
I got the sense you're going to ask questions, so I thought I'd leave.
That would be a smart move. Okay, so Councillor Bell had a question. Do you want to, you go ahead.
So just for context, I just wanted to have an idea of how the town's uniform assessment has changed in the last year, because We all have gotten our assessment notices, and people are asking me, well, what's that going to mean? You know, my property value went up 24%. What's going on? I mean, I can't pay that much more in taxes. And obviously, there is a decoupling between the assessment and the taxes that you pay. Obviously, they're not related to one another. But it led me to question, I wonder how the town's uniform assessment has changed.
Yeah.
So to help me understand my own tax bill.
So we did get the roll recently. It's based on December numbers.
Yeah.
That's where we get it from PVSC. So I looked at, and the thing to remember is, if you've owned your house for a while, the cap is in place.
Yeah.
And the cap was set at CPI, which the way the province did it, their calculation was 7.7. So I don't know what month they use or how they calculate it, but that's in the ballpark. So I know I've checked mine out as well. And so the amount I'm being taxed on is 7% higher, 7.7% higher than last year.
Yeah.
So 7.7 is kind of the base, because anything that didn't sell, that would be the rate increase.
Yeah.
Or it would be capped at that amount. In our role, I looked from the December to December. Now there are appeals. Things have changed throughout the year, but if I look at the report we got from PVSC last year and the report we got from PVSC this December, end of December, our residential assessment, the taxable piece of the assessment, is actually up 10.9%. So 7.7 for everybody.
Yeah.
The other 3.2 would be new construction or houses that have sold, because when you sell your house, the cap disappears and it
Yeah,
resets.
right.
So based on the current market. So
Okay.
that's where our residences are. So generally, I say on average, it's going to be 7.7 for people, right? Because that's where the cap is set.
Yeah, perfect.
I know a lot of people, and I've been asked as well, because they look at that assessment and they see huge increases, but it's the taxable column that affects how much we tax.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So, Your Worship, the way Councillor Bell framed the question leads to another kind of question, that is uniform assessment. So uniform assessment is a calculation that brings in your all kinds of things, but your commercial, your residential, your grants in lieu are factored in there, your exempt properties and so on. So our uniform assessment actually went up 3.1%. Okay, and so that doesn't mean necessarily, because uniform assessment, how do we use it? We use it in formulas and where we cost share with partners, and it's used by the province in calculating transfers. Doesn't mean that we're going to pay 3.1% more in our intermunicipal partnerships because their uniform assessment has changed as well. It's the difference in the change that is likely to impact, and it's year to year, it's kind of negligible. It's easy to predict. So, yeah.
Good. Okay. Anything else you want to tell us, Jerry?
No,
Anything else you don't want to tell us that you should tell us?
No, I think the priorities, for the next little bit is all these are the budgets, but working with the directors now and trying to get the capital budget piece kind of finalized and out in front of you guys early, because we can do that before all the operational piece is done, as we normally do. But yeah, everybody's busy, and I don't know if you know it, but I think I'm okay to say this. If I get in trouble, Jeff will slap my hand later. But there's actually 10 positions in the town that are either advertised or we're trying to fill. So people are short-staffed, so there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of work on our public works, our supervisors, and our managers. So it's taken a bit of time, and I'm not pushed them too hard yet, because I know we still have time, and we can make up some time on the back end. But we'll get those numbers and that capital list put together quite soon.
So, Your Worship, since Jerry brought it up, I'll just jump off there a little bit. And we've already talked about the gap that we have when we do our MPS review and not having a planner. But not having a planner obviously affects our productivity in that role. but it also affects Natalie and the other people in the office, because what happens when you don't have a planner, the calls still come. And so Natalie has to deal with the call about the planning matter, do some conversation, and then pass off to the consultant, and then work with the consultant. Judy, same thing. So the loss of, or the vacancy of a position actually results in work for other people around that position. And right now, currently, we have 10 positions that are either new positions that we're advertising, or they're vacancies that have been created through people leaving or through retirements. This is a very high level for us, 10. Like I was saying to somebody, I think 4 changes in a position in the run of a year would be kind of more the norm with the town, considering there'd probably be a couple of retirements and whatnot. This is going to be part of something we're going to talk about next committee of the whole, but it is the one issue that every day now I'm dealing with is gaps in our human resources, how to fill those gaps, and scarcity of workers. And so that is an issue that we've seen coming for about 10 years, and the tsunami is upon us. So I only share that because it's something that we're dealing with, and it affects what we're able to do internally, and it affects how we're able to address some of the work on that form. So, and obviously there's financial impacts as well. So as an example of financial impacts, we have a junior building inspector position that's out there. The town has only ever had one building inspector until we hired a junior building inspector a couple of years ago, got him trained up, and he got hired away. That's okay, because the whole region needs more capacity. And the only way you can really become a building inspector is on the job work and training at the same time. So if we don't create that extra position, we're always fishing either in our neighbor's pool or hoping somebody's going to teleport in here to fill a position. So the town is actually double the human resource commitment to building inspection because we always need one. So that's one example. We have in our water and wastewater, we've had some retirements there, but there's an area where, we can't be without trained, experts in the business. We have things, obviously on the drinking water side, it's critically important to human health, but on the wastewater side, it's important to the environment. And as a result, human health. And so, we've added some capacity there because we've had some turnover and through retirement and in wastewater and water treatment. Again, training on the job is mostly the way. And so you have to get people with basic, I say basic and I don't mean any disrespect, but with some fundamental skills, and then add a technical layer on top of that over a couple of years. So it's challenging right now on the human resource side, and as a result, it is driving some of our human resource costs to have that extra capacity if we can find the people to fill the roles. So anyway, just wanted to share that. Thank you, Jerry.
Councillor Bell?
Oh, I just want to, because I'm on the audit committee, I'm wondering if you had anything you wanted to share with us about the asset retirement process, and how's that going, and what surprises can we expect? Can you soften it up for us?
I won't claim to be an expert on asset retirement yet. We're working on it. Joelle, Sybil, and myself have taken that on and gone through our assets. We've had 3 or 4, I think I've mentioned, different training sessions that we've had online. We've shared information with Modi and Argyle, how they're handling different things and how we need to handle them. But I don't think it'll be, right now, I don't think it'll be too bad. I mean, the biggest, and they keep hammering in, the number one thing is if you only get your buildings with asbestos on the list, that's probably 80%. I think we know that. We're looking at, more because there's fuel tanks and that kind of stuff. But the one building that's causing us some concern and some issues is actually the old high school. And there's different options about what will happen there. But for me, it's about, even the high school wouldn't be that big of an issue if we said, we have the high school, but nothing's going to happen with it for 30 years, because you have 30 years to kind of plan for it. But if we say there's this cost remedy the asbestos issue in the high school, and it has to be done within 2 years, then it's a big cost for 2 years. So, but yeah, no, we'll have something. We've outlined with the auditors that we plan on having a list in front of our auditors for them to review, like do a preliminary review by the end of February. Yeah.
Good. Anyone else? Okay, good. Thanks, Jerry. Okay, Yarmouth Recreation. Frank's here. Any questions for Frank? Where have we gotten on our, go ahead.
Not really a question, Frank, but just more, I see the cooking club that's going on up at Maple Grove, and I think that's a great kind of setup for those young fellas to be able to go there after school. I see a lot of other things that Matt kind of pushing too, the Nerf thing, and seems like a lot going on. So I think it's good, a good crew up there. I know Tanya's doing some good work too with Make Your Move Yarmouth and all that stuff. So just kudos to the staff up there, really noticing online and things coming out. So a lot going on in the community. So good job there.
And Cook It Up Boys was sponsored by Yarmouth Rotary, so $1,200 helps with that. And I thought I heard the mayor and the deputy mayor are going to be guest cooks one night. So
We are.
what's on the menu, or is it top secret?
I might have to cook some Lebanese stuff. Teach those boys some culture.
Some kibbe.
That's right. Put hair on her chest. Did it for all my brothers. Okay, any questions for Frank? We're good? Okay. Let's get a moving. Where am I here? Not used to having this on here. Okay, licenses bylaw vending discussion. CAR.
Your Worship, Council received a correspondence with some concerns about the licensing bylaw and some of its, I'll say, unintended consequences. When the bylaw was conceived, I'm sure there were reasons back in the 1980s. And I've heard it myself, actually, in the last 20 years, particularly, I'd say, more so earlier in my tenure, was concerns about transient businesses that would come in and basically serve the market, maybe with low price or with an event or whatnot, and then leave. And so, and take with it, the opportunity away from local tax-paying businesses. I don't hear that as much anymore, but maybe it's just not happening as much. I don't know. But that, I think, was kind of the intent of the bylaws. If you're going to come and do door-to-door sales, or you're going to come in and bring in a show of some kind, that there ought to be some fee that goes back to the town, that the town could say to a tax-paying business, well, they've paid a fee. Like you pay your taxes, they've paid a fee. And so fair is fair. Now, whether you agree with that as an appropriate intervention today into free enterprise, that's for you, I guess, to give direction on, and that's kind of the question that we're asking, because the bylaw, when it was originally conceived, I don't think anybody in the community outside of maybe the Agricultural Society was actually in the business of creating events that brought outside vendors into the community. Well, now we do have a business that's been in the area for a few years, and maybe more than one business that are putting on events, and as a business endeavor, and as a result, creating events that the community enjoys. So do we want to impose fees on these events to deal with the idea that some businesses who have real property in town are paying taxes, and these, I'll use the term, and I don't mean any disrespect, but these come from away businesses, these businesses that aren't located right in town, come in and serve the market and don't contribute to the public purse. We need direction on that if the bylaw intent is to be considered. there's obviously some cleanup that needs to happen in the bylaw, and Mr. Albright pointed out some cross-referencing to sections that don't exist. So there's a cleanup. We're going to have to go through a first and second reading process to fix that stuff up and deal with any inconsistencies within the bylaw. But the question I'm really asking you is there a direction from council around the intent of the bylaw? Do we want to still charge door-to-door vendors or transient, I'll call transient businesses, visiting businesses, a fee or a license fee by the town in order to be here? And if we do, then we just dust up the bylaw to reflect that continued intent. And if we don't, then we remove or revoke the bylaw. And if it's something in between, we'll need clarity so that we know what you want before we go try to write it.
Go ahead.
Thank you. For years, since I was a kid, I've heard those arguments that, they come in from nowhere and they take everybody's money and then they go off and it hurts local businesses. And I've always felt it was a bit exaggerated. Now, and again, I'm going back to my own personal opinion here. I'm not against some kind of a fee as long as it's not something that is a problem. But that's not an easy thing to say either. It's easy for me to say it and harder for you to figure out what that even means. But I believe in order to create vitality, and I'm looking at this from a downtown perspective, from a town general perspective, creating vitality comes in many different shapes and forms. And having things like food trucks that are around, having events that bring not just businesses from away, but often bring people from away to take part in, are a good thing. And I think they should be encouraged as much as possible. Now, perhaps there's a fine balance there that needs to be made. But for me, I think the simpler the better, and I don't have an issue personally, and there are other members of council that may disagree, with having these and having very little fee, if any. Just my opinion.
Okay. Councillor Deers?
Oh, thank you. So I recall one time a company, an individual that brought in truckloads of furniture and rented an empty building for a 3-day sale. And I know that the two furniture stores in town at the time both felt the impact of that. And so I understand why they feel they need that protection, that there was no fee. They just came into town, did that, and leave. I don't know. Like on those major sales, I know that we often had requests at the Mariner Center for somebody that had like truckloads of Honda-like generators that would come in and sell them at discount prices. And for the most part, I was told that a lot of them blew up after 8 hours, but it had an impact on the hardware stores and the tax-paying businesses in town. So I'm just a little bit concerned that we would open the gates wide open for those type of things to happen. I hate to throw the baby out with the bathwater, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't know.
So, you what?
I do understand Mr. Orman's concerns.
I understand part of it, but go ahead.
Yeah, so this bylaw, as it's currently written, and I'll give you an example, there are stores that come to the mall that you see a few months before Christmas and they're gone, as the Christmas decorations come down. This bylaw isn't intended to go at those businesses, and nor would it in the furniture. I remember that furniture example. Then I think they stayed a couple of months, things were going so well, but that was a business, a tax-paying, again, a tax-paying business owner, property owner, rented their space for a period of time so they could pay their taxes. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's what the mall does. That's what that business did. The question I think that comes in here is when you bring multiple businesses in, and like the Agricultural Society, or I don't know who does the fishery show now, but they bring in a bunch of businesses, and I don't know how much retail happens there, but at some of these events, there's retail. And as I think that's more, I guess, what the bylaw is aimed at than somebody having a store that they're able to rent out for 1 month or 2 months or 3 months so they can pay their taxes. And an argument could be made that, I mean, the convention center across the road, they have to pay their tax bill, right? And so they have to rent it out for purposes, and if one of those purposes is a flower trade show or whatever, it brings, as Councillor Cleveland said, it brings activity to a community. Part of our downtown blueprint is around events, right? It's not just facades and streetscapes and those things, but it's also having life through events. So it's not an easy one, right? There's two sides to it.
Is this a question of local versus not on top of everything?
Kinda.
Because what's
kinda.
local? Like, what's local? I just have to ask that, like, what's local? What's your address?
I think the genesis of this is, and Councillor Cleveland said it, and we've heard it, is that you have, and as councillors I'm sure you've heard it, is you have tax-paying businesses
Yes.
that are concerned, let's say it's November, right, Christmas shopping starting, and a show comes in, a toy show comes in, and all the mothers and fathers flock to the toy show and buy all the toys they need for Christmas. And the tax-paying business that has toys on the shelf is saying, how's that fair to me? But it can happen in the next community, that it can happen. The toy maker from Yarmouth can go into, Shelburne or Digby and set up in a show in their community. Like, it's kind of.
I understand that piece. It's a tough one, and I understand that piece. But this is coming partially from an events company.
Right, so the events company.
Do they pay taxes?
Yes. Yes, they have a building, I believe they have a building on Collins Street
Yeah, okay,
where they conduct their business and they pay taxes.
okay. So
And
that's
the building-
a difference.
And the
for me.
building, across the road where they hold some of their events, pay
That's a-
taxes.
That's a
And-
difference for me. Yeah,
And some buildings that might get used by an event company like Mariner Center, they put on events, and as we've said, the community enjoys those events.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason we have Mariner Center.
yeah. So for example, Ribfest, right? Like Ribfest comes in, and we know that the restaurants lose some money because people go, instead of going out to eat some of the local restaurants, they go to Ribfest. And yet, the money that the Rotary Club just gave out to this community as a result of that was off the charts, right? So it's a tough one. It's a tough one because there's good and bad in it. But in any case, we probably need to look at this. But we need activity. We need, Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Your Worship. So first of all, just to clarify, this is not associated with the street vendor bylaw, right? This is a separate thing. So this is something that predates the street vendor bylaw. You said 1984?
1983.
83, okay. So I guess one of the things that troubles me is the idea of what responsibility do we as a community or a council owe to consumers of products? So if we're allowing people to come into the community, with their toys for Christmas, when the toy fails, or the kid gets hurt, or it's not, when something happens, what is the recourse? Like, if you have a storefront in a community, and there's a relationship in the community, if something fails, you have someone to turn to say, whatever. Maybe I'm reflecting my age, because today we are all doing online product purchasing anyway, which is, completely divorced from any brick and mortar store, which brings you to the other point of how do we tax all of that? And I do have a concern about our responsibility to support the enterprises that are committing themselves to our community. So if we have businesses that are in good faith coming into our community, setting up shop on our downtown, and paying taxes 12 months of the year, do we have any responsibility? So I guess for me, it's weighing the need, that the allure of having people being able to come in and set up shop for a day or two, and you can all go down and buy your whatever that they're selling, but then there's no continuity in that. How do you find that person a week later when the product is failed? I guess that's, I don't know if we should be in that business, but I think it's time for us to. I'm not ready to make this decision tonight or next or in a week, because I think there probably was a valid reason for the bylaw in the first place, and probably it's been changed and modified and everything over the years to the point where it's become like Topsy, and it's not workable and it's not working for the community. But I'm not convinced that nothing is the answer. To just remove it completely is necessarily the answer. So I'd like to have a little more thought go into this before we just say, oh yeah, let's get rid of it.
Oh, I
Thank
agree.
you.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to, go ahead, Counselor, because we can table it, or, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was never saying, let's just toss this all out.
God.
Never at any point was I saying that. But there are some things that bothered me about some of the things that have been said, respectfully. It's really not up to us to tell Mike Carter or whomever, Joe Blow, where they can buy or not buy their toys, if you're using that as an example. A lot gets bought online, a lot gets bought at stores here, a lot gets bought wherever. People drive to Halifax and buy things. I think we're getting away from the point. I think if it's overly regulated, we're not open for business. I think vitality is a very, very important thing that we have to hang on to. We cannot be closed. We cannot be unwelcome to events, because that's what we are talking about when you're looking at the letter that Rick Allwright wrote. What his concern was about events and the way things were being taxed, or the way things were being, not so much taxed, I guess, but the way the fees were laid out. It reached a point where licensing fees made no sense to have things like craft shows and things like that. That's specifics of what he was talking about. He's talking about issues with even putting on a New Year's dance because of the way it works. So I think we need to relook at that. But at the same time, it's kind of funny because, well, for example, Ribfest was brought up. And I've heard this argument plenty of times about, they come in, everybody goes there, buys up everything, the local restaurants hurt for a period of time, and then they leave town with all of our money. Well, as the mayor pointed out, it's the Rotary Club that puts this on in this particular instance and puts a lot of money back in. The other thing is that if the Rib Fest is set up over there, I, as a counselor, have no right to tell somebody whether to go there or not. And the restaurants have every right to put on a special to compete with Rib Fest if they feel so inclined. And it's 2 or 3 days. It's not the end of the world. It's an event which brings people together. It helps community. And again, I'm talking in specifics for something that needs to be more general than that. But when it comes down to it, I have a real fear of creating some kind of a closed off ecosystem, if you will, where nothing's allowed in. And I think that's a problem that we have to be just a little bit aware of. I do agree that there are concerns on either side, but I think there's a way that we can kind of make it even out somewhat. Thank you.
Councillor Dares and then Councillor Bell.
Yeah, well, just finally, I wasn't suggesting for a minute that we maintain the bylaw as it is. What I'm suggesting is that I think Mr. Allwright has raised some very good issues and some good points that need to be considered. I'm just a little leery of dismissing the whole thing right now until we fully consider, are there times when these fees are important? And I think that's where we need to be. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to bring us back to the original intent, which was, I think the CAO was asking us, is it worth the staff's time to modify and change the bylaw and go back in and look at it, or are we ready to throw it out? I think that's what basically he was asking for direction from us, and so I think the direction I'm hearing is, unfortunately, we probably aren't ready to throw it out. Is that?
My question was a little more, do you want to modify it, and if so, how? Do you want to maintain it? And if so, we'll just maintain it and we'll clean it up. Or do you want to repeal or revoke? 3 options, and obviously 2 of them are more work than the third. But again, if the bylaw has purpose, if this in the eyes of this council, then we need to just be clear what the purpose is and make the bylaw suit your intent in its first reading. And we may hear from the public, right, that if you're on the mark or not, and then you'll go through the second reading. That's the process. So we just want to make sure that we bring forward, at least for first reading, something that reflects what you would like the bylaw to be trying to do.
I'm in favor of tabling it for a bunch, just so we can wrap our heads better. And not that we do, because we always read our stuff and we study it and all that, but when everybody talks, we get more information. You get more insight, and it allows you to kind of think about more questions and different perspectives. That's where I am. So I would have no problem tabling it, but I don't want to table it. I can't make the motion, but if somebody wants to do that and take another, or I guess my question for tabling is, are we okay to table it and look at it individually and ask questions if we have to, and then come back and say to staff, this is what we think, and they could get more information if we need it? Go ahead, Councillor.
Can I be mean and send this back to staff? I'm not looking to table it. I'm looking that we should really take a good hard look at this and do it right. I think there are real issues there. I know that because of what happened, or because of the letter that pointed out the problems, that we've kind of suspended any of those fees that were being charged in order to go through that. While that stays or continues to be maintained, which I think it should be, we should have a good look at this. That's what I think. And I would make that motion if everybody agrees. I move that we send this back to staff with respect. I'm sorry, this is going to be a bit of work.
I'd like some clarity on that, what we're looking for.
We don't, exactly.
Do you want us to step back from the bylaw and do a scan of what other jurisdictions have for similar bylaws. As far as the intent of this bylaw, I think that's really a policy question for council that staff can't really answer. Like, is it better to have a bylaw that collects money from, again, transient events or transient businesses or not? We can look at what others are doing. And we can clean up the bylaw. But I can't tell you how you feel about what the bylaw does.
So, because I'm with you, I want to take a look at it, but we can't ask them to take a look at it because they don't know what they're looking for.
Okay.
'Cause we haven't told them what to look for.
Then perhaps what we should do is make a motion for you to look around and see what other districts do and kind of review that. I'd love to be able to review that in comparison to what we have right now. I'm still leaning a certain direction, but I think we need more information in order to make that decision properly. That's my motion, if anybody wants to second it.
Is that helpful to you? I just want to make sure that whatever direction we're giving you.
No, that is clear, because
Okay.
that should be part of
Thanks,
the
Wayne.
process if we're going to dig into this.
Yep.
Is what are other jurisdictions doing? And maybe an email or a phone call to say to the appropriate person, and how's it working for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, all right. Okay, moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye, contrary? Motion carried. Well, that was a good one. Okay, housing needs assessment, available reports. What would we like to do with this?
No.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah. Can we table that one and kind of look at it next time through? There's
Yeah.
a lot to go through.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this one is going to require some discussion. Once you've had a chance to look through, and I think Natalie identified the ones that are probably most relevant to look
Yeah,
at.
yeah.
It goes back to something I started to speak to a bit earlier is, if it's a priority to do some form of housing assessment, we need to prepare terms of reference.
Yes.
And so what we really need to know from council is, what are the questions? And let's talk about that so after you've had a chance to look at the documents to your satisfaction, let's talk about what are the questions that you would like to have answered through a study.
Okay.
And then we can create terms of reference.
Can we do a separate meeting on that? Oh, sorry.
Agenda for this, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot on this
Yeah.
agenda because we didn't have a December committee of the whole.
Oh, that's fine.
Right, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it feels like a lot, but yeah, we can get things spread out so that we're not having so many, say, conversations that should be really hashed
Yeah.
out on one agenda.
Yep, but we'll get through it all. There's a lot of stuff, like there's a lot of big ticket items. So would council be okay, number one, having a separate meeting on this? And number two, would staff be able to, and that would be Natalie and whoever else, what are the questions that you want us to, if there's questions you want us to answer, then that would be helpful too, so that when we're looking, it just helps us focus. Does that make sense? Just say no. You're allowed to say no.
Certainly, we'll want Natalie's input and
Yes.
you might want my input in terms of the questions we would want the study to answer. And so that's really what your takeaway is here. If we're going to do a study, what's its purpose? What are we going to do with it once the study is done?
Yeah.
How are we going to use it?
Yeah.
And therefore, what are the questions that we need to answer in the context of the study in order to make it useful?
Okay, so that was the question, just probably sounded backwards. But as long as that gets out to us in that kind of form, so that when we're reading through each one, we know what that lens is, kind of. We're going to read everything, but we know what the lens is. And the lens is basically that report, right? Like, what do we need to... So are we okay with that? So the motion would be that staff set up a separate meeting for the housing discussion. Okay? Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Dares. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay, is there anything else on here that's provincial authority that we want to take on? No? I had to say it.
There was no sarcasm in that
No, there was
whatsoever,
there was
Your
no, so there was no sarcasm whatsoever. It's, right? You start to look, it's just difficult because I don't think the public quite understands like who looks after what. So it's hard to spend the public purse on things that are mandated by the province by the same token. We're face to face with folks that need housing every single day. So if we have to do it, we'll do it. Coldest night of the year sponsorship. Okay, so this was, oh, sorry, Councillor, go ahead.
Just a question, I'm not, on the top of my head, I can't remember. Have we done this in the past, in the sponsorship?
I'll be honest, I just give it out of the mayor's fund every
Okay,
year.
the second part of my question would be how would this affect our grants to organization, so.
So that's what we, that's what we have to discuss because I'm over on my mayor's budget. And we're over on the grants. Yeah,
So you're over, $500 isn't going to sink the ship, but we're over.
yeah.
And so you have two options. One option is say, sorry, but here's a grant application because we're currently taking applications. And we have 2 intakes a year now, so if you miss the spring because you're not thinking about it, you can do the fall intake for next year.
So I think, I feel like that's the way to go. I think this is a valuable thing to give to, and I did give it out of the mayor's fund simply because we were past doing grants when they asked, and I didn't want them to go without, I do have permission to do that. But we're trying as a council to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And this is, to me, this is the same type of thing, right? You can ask for a grant, ask for the grant, and then council decides together. So for me, it was, when I added it, or however it got added, it was an opportunity for us to get everything on the same page. Go ahead there, Deputy.
I agree. We had a long discussion about grants and finally came up with something that kind of worked with us. And I think maybe a letter or something to them to communicate kind of how the process will work going forward. Sooner or later, we have to say no. We don't like to do those things, but I mean, in order for, why do we make these protocols and then not follow them? And then there are those people who work very hard to make sure that their applications are in on time and they do follow the rules. And then we very easily accept someone who's late. Not that anyone's at fault here because this is all new. Wade and I just did a video yesterday for the community to kind of figure out the new structure of our grant. So, no big deal there. But I guess on the flip side of that, I did notice in the letter, the second part, there was a request that the town and staff maybe get a crew together to raise money to be part of it. So I guess maybe, I'm willing to do the walk or raise some money as well. So maybe our, financial contribution would be that a few of us get together and raise a few funds and do the walk ourselves. So then they still get cash, we're still participating in it, and then they know next time around that these are the rules moving forward. So I'm definitely down if a few of us want to get together and, at least they still get some money from that as well, so. I agree.
Okay, so, Jeff, would Jody send out, Jody usually sends out to all the staff, or Lindsay could do that, but somebody to send out a message to all the staff to say, like, would you like to participate in the walk or donate or whatever? Because that's what they're asking. Nobody has to do that, right?
If we're going to do that, I'd like a motion from.
Oh, absolutely.
To direct to do that, please.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I just didn't want to make the motion if it wasn't appropriate.
We generally, I'll tell you why I'm asking that is because generally we don't, within our emails and with our staff, solicit for causes, as you can imagine.
Okay.
Right? So, but in this one, if council is committing to participate, or councilors, it doesn't have to be everybody, and you're asking if staff want to join you, that's fine, we can do that.
Okay, we don't want to do anything that's uncomfortable. Okay, we don't want to, we don't want to pass a motion for one thing when it encompasses everything, you know what I mean? We don't want to open the door for everybody to ask us to do this. Thank you, that's the word.
A little uncomfortable, I think, about asking staff to actually do this. I think we're opening the doors for an entirely different situation to another, ongoing situation to occur, and I don't think that's fair to put staff in that situation. So I would be against doing that.
So we can still do it as a council, or, I mean, if yeah.
Individual staff members,
Yeah,
I'm sure they'll talk about it. I'm sure
Yeah.
they're all watching, so
Yeah.
they'll.
Was that sarcasm too?
if you're watching, we don't want to put you in harm's way. Protective. So does that work? Yeah? So the motion would be to send a letter to Coldest Night of the Year, advising of the grants process and supplying the paperwork, okay. All right. Okay, who wants to make that one?
Well, Steve came up with it, so she made the motion. I'll second it.
You good? Okay, moved and seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thanks, folks. Canadian Seniors Curling, that's you, Councillor Dares.
Yeah, and I'll try to be brief. I just didn't want this to get lost. I just want to speak briefly about the significance of that event in December. Normally those events, and I've mentioned this before, normally those events you are awarded through a very comprehensive bid process. And based on the fact that we had a national curling event back in 2017 that was extremely successful and well spoken of, this event was actually offered from the Curling Association of Canada, Canada Curling, contacted JASTA and said, would you like to host this? Which is unprecedented. I think it speaks volumes to the ability of this community to respond to those major events. And thinking back to the past year about the Travel Writers Association, and we have Music Week coming this year, and the 55 plus games were held, those kind of events, in no small part are due to the efforts of JASTA, the JASTA team. So I would like it acknowledged that
Do we not send
also that there was a tremendous volunteer effort. I played a bit role in that, and I was out there and witnessed what was going on. The visitors were absolutely overwhelmed by the volunteers that supported them and the services they provided. The staff at the Mariner Center just did a bang-up job. They had the facility shining. But finally, I guess one of the other things is I think we have to recognize how very lucky we are that we have a production company in our community that's able to organize those events. They mobilized 160 volunteers who put in more than 2,500 hours. And the economic impact from that 1 week was estimated to be in excess of 1.5 million in an off-season, a week on the off-season. So it's pretty significant. And I just wanted to make sure that if we, what I'd like to do is just congratulate Miley's production for actually organizing and pulling off another very successful event, just to give them a pat on the back and say, thank you for what you've done. And I wish there was a way we could also reach out to the 160 volunteers. I know that there was a volunteer reception that was put on by Wiley's Productions at the end of it, so the volunteers did receive a thanks from them. But I just, these events are so important to this community. And we're so lucky to have the people around like Yasta and Mile East to make them happen. So I would like to see, just if it's appropriate, I know that we recently sent something to Yasta congratulating them or thanking them for their efforts. I would like to see us perhaps send something to Mile East Productions just to say thanks, congratulating them on the successful event.
That's your motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. Need a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Go ahead there, Deputy.
Although I'm very thankful for the volunteers and how things turned out, I wonder if this sets a bad precedent when a company that does make money and we're thanking them for the job that they were hired to do, great job or not. So for me, I will be voting no on this motion.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in, were you going to say something?
Just that I think there's other communities in Nova Scotia that would die to have a production company such as Mile East in their community. So I just think we're very fortunate, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Noise bylaw. To recommend that council amend the noise bylaw as recommended by staff.
Your worship, this bylaw came forward a couple months ago, and there was a concern about a conflict within the bylaw, or at least a statement that was kind of contrary to one of the issues we were trying to deal with. We've proposed in this version that conflicting clause be deleted through the amendment process. And of course, your worship, at the Police Advisory Board meeting, we learned that the loud muffler issue, that there is a provision in the Motor Vehicle Act that the RCMP can use. They don't need to rely on our bylaw, and they don't need to rely on noise meters. They need to rely on the effect of that noise on people. If it disturbs people, then they can deal with it.
Do they have noise meters?
They don't, and they also don't have training on how to use them if they did have them.
Okay, so we need some noise meters. We need a noise
They
meter.
don't need noise meters.
We need a noise meter. We need something.
We have a noise meter. We don't have a bylaw enforcement officer. But he or she can't follow cars around and pull them over.
No.
The RCMP have a provision, this is what they told us. They have a provision under the Motor Vehicle Act through which they can act and issue tickets. That doesn't require a noise meter.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. I just keep getting emails, but
So to our worship's
you know, you have to
point,
catch them. But
section 3.0 talks about the noise level being 65 decibels or 55 decibels, depending on the time of day. And how do you measure that with a noise meter?
So we have a noise meter, your worship. We don't have a bylaw enforcement officer. But the issue with vehicles is that they're moving and the context changes. And if you're driving down Main Street between, 3-story buildings and the sound is echoing and the street is right next to, the roads, in the middle of the day, that might be disturbing to lots of people. But if you're out on Parade Street or Forest Street, on the upper part of Forest Street where, there's a graveyard, you're not going to disturb many people there, if your car is loud. So it's contextual, and, the RCMP to pull a car out, measure off the distance, do the noise meter thing. They have a provision that they can act on those vehicles in the Motor Vehicle Act. It does not require the noise meter. The noise meter is great for construction noise, so or a fish plant that maybe it's disturbing neighbors. Okay, well, how loud is it? Is it violating the bylaw? But something that's fixed and constant in its sound. But these vehicles that are being operated in such a way as to intentionally create noise and are disturbing people in residential neighborhoods, they can act on that, not through our noise bylaw, through the Motor Vehicle Act.
Okay. All right.
So, sorry, Your Worship. So the one thing that they said to us, the other thing they said to us is that they need to know. And so when we see, cars that appear to have very loud exhaust systems and are being operated in a way that is exacerbating the situation, a partial plate, a color of the vehicle, a location, time of day, let them know. Let them know. The complaints come in, and then when they see that vehicle, right, then they can have a conversation. They can issue a ticket if they need to. But if they don't get the complaints,
Yeah.
they don't know.
No, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so that's the one thing I took away from that. Two things I took away from that meeting. I've said them both. Is when people have a complaint and they send me an email, my response is send it to the police, because and as Councillor Bell found out in that meeting, they'll take it secondhand, right? It's the information they want.
Yeah, I passed it.
Right,
I
so-
got a couple this week I had to pass on.
So if
right.
people aren't comfortable going directly to the police, and there are people who aren't, and they come to you as a counselor, you can pass that information on. And, it might affect where they patrol or what they're paying attention to, or maybe they've seen some complaints about a black Honda Civic. And so next time they see a black Honda Civic that kind of meets that, they kind of, pay a little, I know there's a lot of black Honda Civics, but they pay a little more attention, right? And maybe they have a conversation with the operator of that vehicle.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead there, Councillor.
That's all really informative, and I've seen some things just lately that have just blown my mind. But my question is, and at that point, I saw some, I'm not going to get into the story, and I actually sent you all an email because I just could not believe what I was seeing. But again, that's another story. What do I do is the question. I don't call 911. I had this discussion with my wife. What do I do? I'm not calling 911 over this, obviously. Do I call them? Do I email them? If I do email them, how do I do that? And these are, if I, who considers himself fairly aware of what happens in and around town, don't know how to do it, then neither does, there are lots of people out there who do not know how to do that. Do you? And I am putting you on the spot.
I would Google it, because I don't get a phone book anymore, right? So
Yeah.
I would look up Yarmouth Town RCMP non-emergency number, because it's not an emergency, it's an irritation.
Exactly.
And so I focus first on getting enough information from what I see to be able to describe it fairly accurately, and location, time of day. And when I got home or had the opportunity, I would Google Yarmouth Town RCMP non-emergency, and maybe a phone number pops up, and that's the number I'd call. Otherwise, I don't know an email address, I'd go down and knock on the door and just report it at the front counter.
Cool, thanks.
So I'm going to say this, Mike and I are going to do a post. I'll put it under my name so you don't get in trouble, Mike. But we have to give people the information to help them get those reports to the RCMP, because it's really bothering folks. Like, it's really, I keep getting emails and, people stopping me and saying, what's going on? Why can't you stop this? So we can do up something and pass that information on and explain why, how and why, and the phone number, 7428777. Okay, go ahead, Deputy.
So I did ask this question because I did have some community members who reached out to me, and the police chief had messaged back, and there is that non-emergency number to call. But the big thing is to document where, when, if you know the car, write down the license plate. The more information that you can give, the better. So the information that I told back to the citizens was right directly from the police chief itself, so I can forward that. But that was a biggie. A lot didn't know to call 911 obviously wasn't the way to go or whatnot. But the thing is just not to let it go. Write it down at the very least, maybe one call that documents, more things. And the follow-up to that was that even if they don't catch them at the time, if you know the car, if you know the license plate, down the road they can at least be watching for it. So, kind of good practices down the road, but it is a huge issue. I live on Baker Street, and I'm sure Councillor Heather knows, and the rest of us can hear it, you know, those little fart motors that go up and down 24/7. I mean, it is distracting, and I get it, you know, young kids, it's great for your cars and you sound cool or whatever, but 11 o'clock, midnight, we have citizens, even one that wrote me and said they were thinking about moving out of town. So if we all hear it, if we can all do our part, the more that they can document, the better.
Go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Yeah, just a comment that, to remind people that a license is a privilege, not a right. And I can tell you anecdotally of an incident where the public was reporting an individual that was racing up and down their street. There was no court action. There was based on the reports that we had, there was a recommendation to the Registrar of Motor Vehicles that his license be suspended, and that was done. They responded and suspended the license without any conviction in court. So there is that option as well. So just because you don't think you've got enough information, you might have just the piece of information that the RCMP need to add to other pieces of information to make that kind of a report.
Got that, Mike? That's going in our little thing. Thanks, Gil. I did not know that. Okay, so the recommended motion is that council amend the noise bylaw as recommended by staff.
There was a bylaw there?
There was a motion. Did somebody move it and second it?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Councillor Bell, and second by Councillor Cleveland. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those in favor say vroom vroom. All those opposed? Okay, motion carried, thank you. Policy bylaw review policy. The recommended motion there is that council adopt the policy and bylaw review policy as presented. Okay, Councillor Heather. Seconded by Councillor Bell. Did you want to share something, CAO, on that one?
Very quickly.
Yes.
The reason we're doing this policy is that this is something that we do on an ongoing basis. And when we create kind of rules or procedures that we want to follow, we put them in policy, then they don't get lost, right? And everybody understands what we're doing. So this is, Lindsay did this one up so that it was formalized and in policy.
Good stuff, okay?
Can you stay with the diaries?
What's that?
I just want you to stay with the diaries. We won't do them all at once.
I haven't heard diary date for a long time. Okay, do we vote? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Provincial Police Advisory Board appointee. So we need on our Police Advisory Board a provincial appointee. I believe it was David Saxton. So we need to replace David. He's finished his term and he's moved on. So we need to reach out to can we reach out to the community and ask for that? Do we have names for that, Lindsay? Did we get any? No names?
So this is a requirement under the Act that we have this provincial appointee. The province does nothing to identify who that appointee is. They kind of put the onus on us to find somebody. You know, we've advertised and we haven't found somebody yet. We've had nobody come forward. So, Your Worship, you know, if anybody on council knows of somebody who you think would be a good candidate, maybe just approach them. And, you know, if they're interested and they would be a good candidate, if we have an email from them indicating that they're interested and why, or what their background is a little bit, we can bring that forward as a nomination.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dares?
I just wondered if there's anybody on the Police Advisory Committee
I was kind of thinking that too.
that might be interested. And aren't we advertising for new members for that committee as well? Natalie's shaking her head yes, so perhaps we'd find somebody in that mix.
Okay.
Anyway, just a suggestion.
Yep. So we'll wait until we hear and then we'll do that.
How about before the next committee of the whole meeting, which is in 3 weeks' time, Your worship, and so who's all on police advisory? Those, you two? So why don't you meet with Lindsay about a week before the next committee of the whole, see if we have any nominations. If we do, look at them and maybe consider bringing one forward. If we have no further names from the community, maybe Councillor Dare's suggestion of nominating one of our existing town appointees as the provincial appointee, so that
Then
we
we'll
can.
need some more, then we'll need somebody as
That we'll still need another town appointee, but at least we can put somebody
in that
in
provincial.
the process to become the provincial nominee.
Okay, good. So let's do that. So Lindsay, can you remind us? Thank you. We good? Citizen Advisory Committee's policy amendment, and the recommended motion is to recommend that council approve amendments to section 12.0, provisions regarding the Waterfront Advisory Committee in the Citizen Advisory Committee's policy as recommended by staff. Okay, moved, seconded by the deputy. Any discussion on that one? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. 100th anniversary cenotaph commemoration. And the recommended motion there is as June 9, 2023 marks the 100th anniversary of the unveiling of the Yarmouth Cenotaph, which honors Yarmouth County's war dead, to recommend that the Yarmouth Town Council support the establishment of a committee to commemorate the anniversary. Did you want to speak to that, Councillor? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so it is the 100th anniversary of the cenotaph. I think anybody that is a citizen of the area still finds reason to pause and reflect every time they go by that monument. It is, it's a landmark in our community. And our parks supervisor, Todd Muse, has been leading this effort to commemorate the 100th anniversary. Just for your information, so this was the original record of that event that was published in the Yarmouth Light in 1923, and the Vanguard republished it in its entirety in 1997. So we have the actual, we have everything that was done to commemorate the unveiling, and it's the intention to replicate that again on June 9th this year. And so this motion is just to formalize the intention of council to support this initiative, and we have found an appropriate grant program from Veterans Affairs Canada that we think would be a really perfect fit for this occasion. And we hope that the town, in taking this on, if council chooses to take this on, that the town would provide support for developing the grant application and seeing whether or not we can put this event on in the way that it's envisioned, which is, we want to bring the schools in if we can, and have actual period costumes. And it's a very nice event. So hopefully the council will support that.
Yarmouth's birthday.
It is Yarmouth's birthday, yes.
Better be cake. Okay, go ahead.
So I would make that motion.
Go ahead.
I just see Todd Muse's name there, and anytime you see Todd Muse's name there, you know something good's going to happen. So the man shows respect to anyone who's at to everyone for that matter, but anything to do with veterans or whatnot. So I think it's great that he's involved in it as well, and this is definitely something I'll be supporting. So great to see it.
Good. Any further discussion? All those, go ahead.
That there would be a motion to appoint a representative from council to serve on the committee.
Has your name written all over it when we get to it.
I would be happy to serve.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. And the second recommendation is that council nominate Councillor Bell Hatfield to serve on that committee. Okay, then moved and seconded. Do you accept? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Good stuff. Waterfront Advisory Committee, council appointments, to recommend the council appoint 2 councilors or 1 mayor and a councilor to the Waterfront Advisory Committee. Only because I promised Jim when he left that he said, would you take the waterfront? So I would be willing if you're okay with that. I never say that really, but. So we need 2 people. You want to, okay? I'm more than glad to do it. The deputy mayor says he's glad to do it. Do we need nominations?
Worship, I would make a motion to appoint the deputy mayor and the mayor to the Waterfront Advisory Committee.
Okay, moved and seconded. We good? That's all we need? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay, the Pan Mass Challenge, that was Councillor Lesser's. Can you explain that better than me?
From what I read, I know Councillor Lesser had forwarded, basically, I believe, is it biking? And it happens down in the States, I believe. Yes, and I believe this person goes to Harvard University, and he's partaking in this. And what it is they raise money for cancer research. And within the letter that was sent, I mean, they went above and beyond for the research and the things that they has come out of this fund where they raise money. And basically, the person who's asking is Noah Warner, who is someone from here, and he would like $500 in sponsorship to be able to help with the funds to come in or to be able to partake in this. And also on the second day that this goes on, he said that if we give him a jersey or a t-shirt, he would wear it during the event. So, you know, New England, the link, it may be good. So, although we did just have the discussion of money and being short, and if we're going to do it to one, we got to stick to it. As nice as this is, you know, we are where we are. But I think that's just the general overview of kind of what the request was. Although a worthy cause, the one that we just didn't do was a worthy cause as well. So
I think the request to bring it forward is what he did, so. Okay, go ahead.
Your worship, again, we just had this discussion and just turned down the coldest night of the year. So I wouldn't feel comfortable supporting this. But to be honest, not to be too big a contrarian, seems like this is my day for it, I was prepared to speak against it, believe it or not, and I'll give you my reasons why. First off, it's $500 American that we are giving to an American medical charity. And I have a bit of a problem with that, with everything else that's going on in our own backyard. You're asking for $500 American of our tax dollars to go to the United States. And even with paying that and getting the town of Yarmouth on a cycling jersey, there is a town of Yarmouth in Massachusetts, and I don't really think that something that says Yarmouth is going to have any significance down there whatsoever. So I guess that's my humble opinion. I think we should wish him the best of luck and say no, respectfully.
With you 100%, and I would say kudos to this student for reaching out in this, reaching out this far. So good on him, and maybe he'll have some success, or she. I didn't read the, I didn't see the name, but we can, there's not even a, there is a request, but there's no motion. So should we, what? Yeah. Okay, so are we good? Oh, sorry, Councillor Val.
That was what I was going to recommend, that we receive it and place it on file.
Okay. Thank you. Building development fees, that's Natalie.
Council and Mayor, I prepared a report based on the September priority session, just to basically describe how building fees are calculated. And at the time that I did the review, I did a jurisdictional scan of other towns to compare their fee structure and their fees in comparison to ours. And the outcome of that analysis showed that simplification was a good recommendation, so that the public, it was transparent to the public how we calculated fees, and added some additional categories again for transparency and to reflect the effort. Not that there isn't equivalent effort by the building official, but there is lesser effort for smaller projects. So that actually came forward in last year when we did our annual review, and it was adopted by council. So I just wanted to give you the explanation of how we do that review. And if you have any questions, then I'd be happy to answer it.
Any questions? This is good. I like this. I really like this. But it's great to see it on paper.
I'm sorry I didn't hear you. Oh, thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Dayers.
Thank you. I think it's time. I just want to tell the story that last year I applied for a building permit to build a deck, and I think the entire cost was $28 with taxes. It required 3 visits by the building inspector to my home. So I certainly think I got more than my money's worth. And I expressed my opinion to him at the time that perhaps it should be attached to the full overall cost of the deck rather than the square footage or something. But anyway, it was just, to me, a $28 fee for 3 visits to my home. It's a little backwards, so I'm glad this is coming forward. Thank you.
I would pay $50 for 1 visit. I always
We'd
get
be happy
nervous.
to charge you.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. Meadowfields Community Playground, that's Councillor Dayers.
They did a presentation last year and then followed it up sometime later with a request. I'm just wondering if anyone's ever responded to that request, and if not, when will we?
Going from memory, Your Worship, I think when that was brought to the table, it was tabled, and it hasn't been requested to bring it back on an agenda. If that request comes, it'll show up on an agenda for discussion.
Okay, we've got correspondence here, I believe, that needs some action. So the Fidelis House was a request for funds, was it not?
It was.
I just read this last night. Okay, so what shall we do with this? We can go ahead. I say we can still receive and place on file. We can. You're on. Oh, you're thinking. Are you thinking? Because you're on.
Yeah, I think here we go again, is all I'm thinking.
Yeah.
All due respect, but this is becoming frustrating. Over and over again, we talk about this budget that we've put together, this process that we put together, and then have a whole slew of submissions, and good on them as far as it goes. There is a lack of awareness too But everybody's trying to go around that process, and it's becoming frustrating. And I think maybe we should have just a standard letter that, thank you for your request. Here's how you submit. Honestly, I think that should be a standard reply to these now.
So don't turn your light off. Can I ask,
Sure.
let's have a little conversation. So I agree with that, except I don't want to put staff in a position where they would send a letter out and then we say that one was different. So I'm on the fence. I'm sort of okay with them coming to us as long as we keep doing what we're doing, and then the letter goes out. Because I'm so scared that something will come up and we'll say, this is something that we really need to handle. Go ahead. Were you going to?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I think you need to see
Yeah.
them just in case there's
Yeah.
one that comes through that's different for some reason. But maybe when we put these on the agenda, we can put a recommendation, right? When there are requests for funding outside of the grant process, the recommended motion will be received, placed on file, and we know that means send out the standard letter, here's the grant application.
Yeah.
In our process.
Okay. And then we don't miss anything. And it's hard sitting here saying, we're not saying no, we're saying apply, right? So we very rarely, we said no once tonight, but that was different.
That was different.
That was
different.
Yeah, it was.
But there you are. So I
That's
guess
right.
in order to be transparent and in order to make sure everybody gets their moment, then perhaps, yeah, you're right. But for this one, I would recommend that we just, put a reply in.
And it's not for me, it's not for them to get their moment. I understand what you're saying. It's for us to make
have
sure.
our moment, to make sure that we get to see
need to make sure we
this.
don't miss something.
In the order of in the
Right.
spirit of transparency.
Like, for example, an event comes up, it's like, we've got to have, it just came up. We
Yeah.
need this.
We need $10,000 or
We have to
whatever, it's
find a way,
happened.
right?
Yep.
So I don't want us to miss something.
Yep.
Okay. Deputy?
Yeah, just pretty much to reiterate what Councillor Cleveland said, it's so hard, and it's not that, all these causes that we're saying no to are, it's hard.
They're all
If there was that pot of money in the back room that some people think exists that we could just grab from it, this would make it easier. But in these stretch times with budgets and different things, like, we don't go through these processes to make these rules to then make the exception to the rules every time it come in. I just calculated from the numbers given, and 28% of the people who stay there are from our area. And it's not, my grandmother broke her hip and I stayed 2 nights there myself with my mother. It's a wonderful place, volunteers and whatnot. But at the end of the day, there is a process in place, and what was the point of putting it in place if we continue to do these things, right? So, I guess I like the idea of the letter, though, to say, if you would like to apply to our grants process, this is how you go. But if we don't follow the rules, then, what's the point of a budget and a protocol overall? Very grateful for the job they do. And, like I said, I personally gained from it myself, but here we are, right? And sometimes they don't elect you to make the easy decision. So,
Gosh, no.
very grateful, but,
Yeah, but apply. So what do we want to do with that one?
Still trying to go back to England again.
See, we gotta sing, his grandmother's gotta go to Toronto. Yeah. Okay, so what did we do with it? Right, okay. Okay, so do we need a motion? Yeah. So, okay, moved and seconded to send a letter with the grant process. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Yarmouth International Airport request. Go ahead there, Councillor.
I will speak briefly to that. As you know, there's an effort underway to right-size the airport and to modernize it, and hopefully someday to make it affordable for the municipal units. And this is an application for a $95,000 project, a consulting project. The ask from the town of Yarmouth is for $5,700, and it's an opportunity to get a report on modernizing the operations of the facility. And what I mean is that is the structural operations, not the airport operation itself, but things like the electrical and those kind of systems that need to be modernized. So I honestly think it's a good bang for the buck. And I'll be making a motion that we support this. Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, second by Deputy Mayor. So Jeff and Jerry, how does this work? We just committed to funds. Hey, Jer.
So I guess they're looking forward out of this fiscal year budget from what I'm reading here, not next fiscal year.
Yeah, I believe this project, we only became aware of this project in recent months, and I think there's a deadline that needs to be met prior to the new budget year.
Your Worship, I know you can commit to it. You can commit, but I would suggest you commit out of next fiscal year's budget. It says here they're going to do a soft start in the latter part of 22-23 with completion for June 2023. So if you say yes, they've got what they need for the grant application, they've got a commitment from the town, but they don't actually need your cash until next fiscal. So if you make the commitment out of next fiscal, it's a little easier to deal with.
Okay.
So I'd amend my motion to refer it to budget. Thank you.
He just referred it to budget.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that because the budget won't be set before April 1st.
The option is to
Commit to it.
commit to the money to come out of next year's budget. So then you don't have to.
I'll amend my motion.
Accordingly. Okay, and then you're not wondering if you're going to get it? You know you will, okay? Yeah, and the seconder is good with that, okay? So all those in, any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried, okay? Okay, the next thing on the agenda is order breakfast, because we're not used to long meetings. Yarmouth Hospital Foundation's Radiothon. Go ahead there, Councillor Cleveland.
I guess there's one thing that keeps coming up too within this whole thing, is that there's a difference sometimes between funding and sponsorship.
There is.
And so sponsorship isn't the same as funding. However, in this instance, I still feel uncomfortable okaying this at this point. I'm not prepared to. You know, if someone else wishes to, that's fine and power to you, but I would turn this down at this point. I'm sorry. Do we normally sponsor?
Yes. We do. We do. I'm just trying to think of how we do it. Is it always the same time of year, that March? It is.
Your Worship, regardless of what you decide to do for this year, I think there needs to be correspondence to them to say, this is an annual event, and we have an annual process, now with 2 intakes. And so if they can set in their calendar, right, if they want the town to participate, if they would put it through this process, then we'll have room to deal with it.
You know, Jaws is my favorite movie, and we're going to need a bigger boat of money. Sorry, but like when we look at all these, you know, like we've got a little pot of money. So, did you make?
No, I didn't make a motion.
No, I didn't think. No, I didn't.
plan to.
No, I didn't think so. I didn't think so. I just wanted to make sure. So, what do we want to do with this one? And like the CAO said, regardless, we have to. Okay. Go ahead there, Councillor
I
Daly.
guess the motion would be that we follow our grants policy in this regard.
Okay. All right. Deputy?
And I mean, even though if the money doesn't come during the radiothon, if they do apply, the money would still be going to the same place when they apply through the grants process. So, you know, it might not go to the grand total that looks good, but it's not that we don't support what they do, and it's just, once again, we've made this, we have to stick to it.
Got to
So,
come the
you know,
right way. Okay,
yes.
good. Go ahead.
One final word, and then I'll shut my
No,
mouth.
you go right in. You're doing
But
great tonight.
Here's the thing, is that what is happening, it's the same with Fidelis House, and I have, again, and I know this is a digression, but I've personally raised money or helped raise money for Fidelis House through work that I've done with other organizations. These are people who are looking to raise money for a charity, okay? And what they're doing is asking the town of Yarmouth to commit taxpayer money to the charity, and then they're going to have this big radiothon asking those taxpayers to further give. In a way, I'm not really comfortable with it that way when I think about it that way, because if somebody wants to give funds to the radiothon, they're free to do so. And it doesn't have to be us spending taxpayers' money on it. And now that I've completely become Ebenezer Scrooge, I'll shut up, but that's really how I'm feeling about this, and especially with, you know, it's tough times, and everybody's assessments are going up, and chances are we always ask, we have lots of things to pay for, and maybe it's not our job to raise money for charities. Sorry.
You know, it's funny through COVID, at NSFM, like we got I don't know what it was, like $72 million or whatever it was, that went out to the different municipalities. And that was a lot of money, like to help out. And the very next question, the very next level was all these charities, like what are they going to do? It's exactly what you said. People can't afford it. They're not working there. So how does that get worked out? We certainly couldn't do it, but yeah, there's just a lot going on. So the motion was made that we put this through our grants policy and that we send them the information. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, okay. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. I gotta say, that was the hardest one. But again, we support, we just have to do it through the right process. Municipality of Yarmouth request for water line extension on County Crescent. CAO, did you want to?
Yep, so your worship, that's up in their industrial park, and what they're doing in this particular instance is something like a 60-meter extension of a water line. It's not very far at all. They did submit plans. I did share with the manager of Public Works, and his comment was that they should add a hydrant to that extension to maintain the spacing that we have within the industrial park. But aside from that, there's no reason not to approve it. They didn't ask for an extension of sewer line in this request. It was solely focused on the water. But again, there would be no reason to refuse it. I think, and I've tried to find, or I've had Lindsay trying to find, you know, in the original, when the Industrial Commission originally initiated that industrial park, what commitment was made by the town towards the services, or permitting the services to be extended in there. There must have been something. So if we could identify that, then we know the scale of the commitment of the town generally towards the industrial park. As the manager points out, there's another 100 acres they own there. And that could result in a large amount of demand on our water and sewer. And so we should understand what our commitment is today, and then, you know, be thoughtful around future commitments and our capacity. So, but for now, to answer their question, the recommendation to council is to approve it with the caveat that it include a hydrant towards the towards the furthest end of the extension.
Hydrant part of the water or part of the fire?
The hydrant's part of the water system.
Thank you.
And so the water, it's probably a utility issue really, but as I'm thinking about it, but the hydrants are part of the water utility infrastructure, and the water utility bills each the town and municipality for the fire protection aspect of the water each year based on the hydrant count.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Heather?
Yeah, just a question. So the cost for this would come from the municipality. It doesn't fall on the taxpayers of the town?
That's right. So anytime the water system is extended to service more customers, the infrastructure is at the cost of the municipality. They aren't, they are town residents, and they turn that infrastructure over to the utility. And, we don't have to accept it if it wasn't built to our standards, so they're very careful to make sure that they do anytime that they've put an addition on.
So it's water, it's not sewer?
And I misspoke, Your Worship. The Manager of Public Works asked me about sewer, and that was a great point raised by Councillor Hatfield. So the sewer infrastructure is not turned over to us. So that's why they wouldn't have had to ask. We already have an existing agreement on sewer treatment, so the flow of sewer that comes in from the Hebron extension of the sewer line, all the infrastructure belongs to them, it's metered, and we bill them for the processing. So how long the pipes are and where they go is kind of irrelevant to us. We meter the flow and bill accordingly. So it's just the water infrastructure that they need permission on.
Okay, Deputy?
We probably don't know why they want to do this, but is there a concern it would be a strain for our water system at all?
There's no concern at this point.
Perfect, thank you.
The only concern flagged by the Manager of Public Works was the amount of undeveloped land that still exists as that large assembly. And, we always have to be mindful long-term. So what is the capacity of our systems, and be sure that we don't put ourselves or them in a hard spot, so.
Okay. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
Maybe a recommendation to the utility, since we have a utility meeting later.
Okay, do you want to make a motion to recommend it to the utility? So moved. Thank you. Councillor, did you just second that, Heather? Okay. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Additions, I'm just going to quickly mention the warming center that will start in approximately 24 hours from now. So I think you all got the information, but emergency measures doesn't step in except under special, warranted regulations. So just thought that we need a place for people to go. And I did speak with the RCMP. They're going to stop by a couple times during the night just to say hello, things like that. It's a warming center. It's at the fire hall. So it'll start 6 o'clock tomorrow night, go till 8 in the morning Saturday. And then it'll go from 6 o'clock at night till 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. And basically that's it, but it's a warming center. It's not, you're not going to get a bed. I said, if you want to bring a pillow, bring a pillow if you want to be comfortable, but it's basically to keep people warm. It's not for meals and all that thing. So I put in the release, like just, bring snacks, bring whatever you want, cards, games, puzzles. Go ahead there, Chief.
Just going to say the volunteers have offered to help as well. So if you need to, we can reach out to them. And Shane, the REMO coordinator, our new REMO coordinator, has reached out to me, and he will provide services as much as he reasonably possibly can. So,
yeah, good.
Yeah, we've had good interactions with the new REMO coordinator. Shane is very engaged.
Yeah, excellent. I know that they just can't, because it's cold weather, they're not going to say emergency, right?
Yeah, that's correct. It was an informative, communication that, if we need to, we can reach out to him for
perfect.
different things. Yeah.
Good staff. So that's what we're going to do. Counselor Bell and then, Counselor Gill and then Counselor.
Yeah, just a quick question. I've been informed that there's people living in the woods off the Maud Lewis Trail, and I'm wondering if there's any way to make sure that they know that this is available, rather than spend the night in the woods.
Yeah, they won't, I don't think they'll spend the night in the woods. Yeah, I think the police will go out and, I did talk to them. Go ahead, Counselor.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I just wondered what we're employing to let people know. I know we're doing social media, but have we let, for instance, the CBC they're coordinating information, and I just wondered, how far afield should we go to let people know that this is available?
I think we did social media, of course, because we always do that. The radio has been notified. I did do an interview with them. Tina with Saltwire is on that as well. So the idea is that we don't want people to have to come, right? It's sort of like Jeff always says, when you open a comfort center, your goal is to shut it down as quickly as possible, because we want people to reach out to their families and friends and neighbors, and we want people that know there's someone out there that needs help to do that. So that's where we're going with that. And we're just trying to manage expectations, because it's not a comfort center. It's come in here and be warm, and it'll be comfortable. CAO, were you gonna, did you have to, you kept looking at your mic like you want to say something.
No.
Okay. I guess I just wanted to make people aware. So we have a couple volunteers lined up, not enough, but I'm just waiting to hear from the fire department volunteers there as well. I'll hear, I said, by 7 or 8 this evening. And then I think the deputy and I are going to go right after a meeting tomorrow night. And Councillor Dare said that you said, like, we'll pop in and do what we can. For as long as we can, it's both nights. Because I did recheck the, so that's all I want to say there. Communities in Bloom.
Thank you. This is, I can put my glasses on here. This was a motion that came from the Communities in Bloom meeting held yesterday. And the motion was that it was moved that the Communities in Bloom Committee recommend to Council to have staff explore the feasibility of developing QR codes for the historical sites, buildings, homes, trees within the town of Yarmouth. And this is per the recommendation from the 2022 Communities in Bloom evaluation. So when the judge was in town, this was a recommendation that he put in his report to the town. And so we're kind of picking through the report and looking at things that we feel that would be helpful to actually implement within the town. So this was a motion put forward to the council.
Okay. Do you want to read the motion again?
I will. Yep. Recommend it to council that council have staff explore the feasibility of developing QR codes to be placed on historical sites, buildings, homes, and trees within the town of Yarmouth, as per the recommendation in the 2022 Communities in Bloom evaluation report.
Thank you. Okay, seconded. Okay, so it's almost like, is it a QR code that we have on the historic buildings that Neil did?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I don't think that operates for the QR code. I think it's a Heritage in Your Hand app, so it's an app that you can get.
Gotcha.
And when you stand in front of a certain property,
Yeah.
it brings up details. What I think is being proposed here is some kind of a little post with a QR code, and you walk up with your phone, you do this, and then it gives you the information, like a narrative about the property. And that was suggested, as said, is in the report that we got back from the judge from the last summer. I'll second the motion for the purposes of discussion, but I will add this, that I'm aware that last year, and I think this may be a project that we could try to engage students at the NSCC. I was just told last week that there were 12 students in the IT program last year that were supposed to do a project, but they could only find projects for 2 of them. So there may be an opportunity to engage a student, and I know that there's one out there that, for example, has previously developed websites, and I think that's actually what needs to be done first, is the development of the website. So I would just offer that information.
Okay? So you made the motion, you seconded it, okay? Are there any more questions? Go ahead there, Deputy.
No questions, but I just think this is a great idea. It's new age. I think, it's just a draw. People always have their phones on them. They're walking around. They can get the information so easily. I mean, you can download those programs, no problem. So I think that's very forward thinking, and yeah, great job. I'll be supporting for sure.
I think it shows for us as a committee anyway, it shows us the value of when those judges do come to town. So when you have fresh eyes come in that can offer you, information on what's going on in the rest of the world, right? It's things that we would not have I wouldn't have thought of anyway. I didn't really even know what a QR code was. But you're right. I mean, that's what people are looking for. And so it's just if we can start to look at it, it may take us a while to get it done. We may never get it done, but we need to start looking at and moving forward in that kind of a direction.
Agree. Go ahead.
Well, the other comment is that I sometimes think we overlook the fact that we're really rich in heritage, built heritage here in this community. And that became very obvious to me when I was asked during the curling event that took place by some of the curling teams to drive them around town and point out some of those features. And they were really interested in our architecture. So I think this kind of an app or this kind of a program being available might be, and it's not just buildings, it's stories. And also it's a lot cheaper, I think, to put a little post with a QR than to put, one of those panels that has to be replaced because, and we're looking at that on Water Street now, they're extremely expensive. This is, you've got the panel in your hand rather than us erecting a structure. So I'd be supporting that for that reason.
Okay, go ahead, CAO.
Yep, just wanted to point out to council that all of the registered heritage properties in the town of Yarmouth have their own individual page off of our website. So from a technology point of view, I mean, all you're really, unless you want to tell more stories, is connecting the person on the street looking at that building to that website if they're really curious about what it is, right? So snap the QR code, take them right there. So the technology aspect of this, at least for those properties, is it's already done, except generating a QR code to take you that URL. And the actual work here is in getting the permission from the property owner to put a post there with the QR code in front of the property.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay, so do you want to, did you say you want to go right into we can?
Yeah, let's go right to the water.
Okay, so motion to adjourn. Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Cleveland. See it if you're awake. All those in favor? Aye.